When Cuphead's The Delicious Last Course came out at the end of June this year, the 4-year wait for the DLC was more than worth it, with an entire new aisle worth of content to explore, enjoy, and get enraged at. This is the subject of today's video, where I rank every Cuphead DLC boss based on how difficult they are. I plan to make another video in the future based on how much I liked each of these bosses, and if this video gets enough likes, I'll rank the other 19 bosses in the game in the same ways. With that said, let's get started. At number 8, and also the easiest boss in the DLC, is the King's Leap, which is actually a collection of chess-themed mini-bosses centered around parrying. The pawns are pretty easy once you get the hang of them, although the headless ones also running around could be a bit of trouble if you're not agile enough. The knight gave me a lot of trouble on my first playthrough, and he does take a lot of parries to kill, but it's all about timing your parries perfectly as to not have to spend too long dealing with him. My personal favorite, the bishop, can also be tricky with his head flying around, but if you have Smoke Bomb or Miss Chalice equipped, you can make the fight a bit easier. The knight and the queen, while they are also a bit challenging, can be manageable with some good timing. Really, that's what the King's Leap boils down to, timing and recognizing attack patterns. If you're able to do both of those things, then these 5 bosses will be a breeze. Also, I still can't believe that this is the death quote for the knight. Surprised not a lot of people use it on Twitter though. At number 7 is the Secret Angel and Demon boss. After solving the secret graveyard puzzle, you fall asleep and dream a little dream about what I can only describe as PTSD from fighting the devil. It's a pretty simple premise on paper. There's an angel on one side whose attacks are passive, and on the other side there's a demon whose attacks can hurt you. The demon is always in front of you though, so if you turn around, the places the angel and demon are in will alternate. Since this boss isn't graded, you can just stick to a strategy of shooting from one corner of the platform, but if you're a perfectionist, it can be tricky to get a perfect score on this fight due to how much stuff the demon shoots at you. Regardless, it's not the hardest thing out there, so beating them shouldn't take you too long. At number 6, and starting off the main aisle 4 bosses, are the Howling Aces. But just because they're the easiest of the 6 bosses to come doesn't mean they're an easy fight overall. Quite the contrary, in fact, as they are a pretty difficult boss. The first phase puts you against a bulldog in a plane firing bones and balls of yarn at you, all while some smaller doggos in the wings throw bones at you that you have to dodge. It's a bit hectic, but doable with good reflexes. After that, his plane breaks down and the dogs in the wings eject and spin in a circle around you while using the Hilda Berg strategy of giving the phrase "words hurt" a whole new meaning. There's plenty of parry opportunities in this and the first phase, so you don't have to worry too much about that. And there is also a secret final phase if you don't kill the dogs in the second phase, but it's always been really hard for me to get there. Anyways, what you do have to worry about is the last phase, because this is where things start to get really weird. It starts out where the biggest and most cursed looking airplane fires its super laser piss at you, before this figurative and literal bitch tilts the screen and fires dog food bowls at you, with the red ones going all the way to the airplane you're standing on and the yellow ones hovering above you. This phase was really trippy for me when I first played it, but after I realized I could make the fight a lot easier by tilting my head to the side, this phase became a bit more manageable. Overall, it's definitely a hard boss, but I feel that says more about the difficulty of the bosses to come than anything else. At number 5 is the Moonshine Mob, a boss full of scrap concepts from the base game. It starts out with you fighting a spider whose attacks range from throwing caterpillars to spawning explosive egg sacs to calling in reinforcement bugs, all while police bugs try to shoot you with pesticide. It is admittedly quite hectic, but as long as you can get rid of the egg sacs before they become too much of a problem and watch for parryable pesticide clouds, you'll be good to go for the next phase, where a female bug dances on the middle platform while musical lasers fly around the screen, and when they turn red, they hurt you. If you have Smoke Bomb or Miss Chalice and use her dodge roll when the lasers turn red, however, this phase is pretty easy to get through. Then for what's assumed to be the last phase, an anteater shows up and pokes his nose from the left and right sides of the stage before he uses his tongue to grab a group of bugs acting in a similar manner to an Irish happy hour and yeet them across the screen. It's a bit hard to hit the nose since his tongue is invincible, but as long as you're careful and as long as you destroy the fighting bugs before they become too much of a problem, and also parry the tongue if you're Cuphead, you'll be done in no time. Or so you think, because this boss takes a page from the Ryan Johnson book of Subverting Expectations, and has the last phase be a snail shooting really fast projectiles at you. It's done with pretty quick though, so you don't have to worry too much. Overall, Moonshine Mob is a pretty difficult, if not unique boss, but there's still 4 more bosses to go, so let's see which ones they are. Number 4 was really hard for me to determine. Would it be Glumstone the Giant or Mortimer Freeze in this spot? Ultimately, I went with the latter simply because his first phase is slightly less hectic, but that's not saying much with these stupid icicles running around. Just kill them with Roundabout or Converge before they become too much of a problem, use Crack Shot for when the Ice King is flying around at the top of the screen, and be sure to get your parries in as they're really hard to come by in this fight. But once the first phase is done, the next 2 phases are slightly easier and a lot of fun. The second phase has a giant snowman trying to attack you in various ways, but just make sure your reflexes are good for when he jumps across the stage or spawns knives to stab you, and be mindful of when he spawns the popsicles so you can parry the pink ones without accidentally shooting them like I've done countless times. Finally, for the last phase, he turns into a Twitter user and takes you to some spinning platforms, and there's a few attacks. One of them is where he shoots his eye at you in a similar manner as the Illuminati eyes in Jimmy the Great's last phase, and he also throws buckets at you, watch for the pink ones, and he also spawns Bing Chilling cones in random parts of the stage. Once again, as long as you have good reflexes, and if you have either Smoke Dash or Miss Chalice equipped, you'll be good to go. At number 3, as I already alluded to in the previous entry, is Glumstone the Giant. As the first boss you'll fight in the DLC, Glumstone fits the theme established in the base game of the first boss in each aisle becoming progressively harder as the game goes on. Because while he may have some easier parry opportunities than Mortimer Freeze, he's still quite hard to get through, especially the first phase. Like, if he uses the Fox attack on you and you don't have Miss Chalice to double jump and dash to avoid being hit by the gnomes on the ground that can damage you, you'll just have to tank the damage, I'm sorry. Then for his next phase, he takes out some hand puppets of the Devil and King Dice and has them playing catch with each other, all while some more gnomes jump out of the ground to try and hurt you. Twist Up is definitely a good weapon choice here, and if you have Miss Chalice equipped, which you probably do given what I mentioned about phase 1, you can just dodge roll when the puppets throw the sack towards you and you'll be good to go. Then for the last phase, Glumstone vores you, and you go inside his stomach to fight whatever the hell this unholy abomination is. He shoots chicken legs and bones at the platforms below you, with the chicken legs making a platform go away, while the bones make a platform parryable so you can get all the platforms back. Since the thing is at the top of the screen and moves around a lot, Crack Shot makes for a good weapon choice, and as long as you can avoid all the darts that'll also be thrown at you all the while, you'll be able to give this giant a tummy ache and move on with the game. At number 2 is Esther Winchester, who also holds the distinction of being the hardest airplane boss in the entire game, which I feel only says something about the next boss I'm going to talk about. But yeah, Winchester is no joke, especially with her first phase. There is so much stuff going on, from her shooting snake oil bottles like revolvers, to pulling giant cactuses from the side of the screen, to these bird things shooting spiky balls at you. But this is a very fast-paced fight, so just don't get distracted and keep shooting at Winchester's face, and you'll be done in no time. The second phase is a bit less chaotic, where she starts sucking stuff up with a vacuum before shooting safes at you, but luckily this phase is mercifully quick, so before you know it, you'll be moving on to a phase that probably cemented the Moldenhauer brothers as PETA's biggest enemies, where Winchester gets sucked up by her own vacuum and turns into a sausage. She then proceeds to start shooting stakes at you while cans of sausage links pop out and try to hurt you. Just be mindful of the sausage links, parry the pink stakes Winchester shoots at you, and before you know it, she'll turn into a can of sausages? At this point, what should I have expected from something like Cuphead? Anyways, the sausage links she shoots out crisscross across the screen, with some openings here and there for you to escape being hit, all the while Winchester shoots peppers at you to add to the challenge. It's still pretty hectic, but as long as your reflexes are good enough to avoid being crushed by the sausages, you'll get this boss down in no less time than I did raging through my first playthrough of the game. And finally, at number 1 is Chef Saltbaker. By extension, this means he's the hardest boss in the entire game. This especially applies to him on Expert mode, where his first phase is so brutal that it borders on being unfair. But in general, this is still the hardest first phase in the entire game, where the final boss, who also happens to qualify as a twist villain, brutally massacres the food you collected for him and uses it against you, all while a flame, or 2 on Expert mode, jumps around the stage to try and hurt you. It's an insanely hectic first phase, to the point where it makes Dr. Call's robot look like Werner Vermin, and we're not even a phase through the fight yet. For the second phase, Saltbaker grows bigger and summons 4 smaller salt shakers to sneeze colorful kidney stones at you, while Saltbaker yeets some leaves into the air to make things harder. This is a bit of a breather phase, but the leaves do make things a bit challenging due to their zigzag falling pattern. But after damaging the salt shakers and yeeting them at Saltbaker enough times, you end up in a salt field where some dancing salt creatures start jumping around in a similar manner to Goopy Le Grande, minus the occasional jump scare, while Saw saws at the ground in preparation for the final phase. If you're not careful, the salt dancers could hit you when they first fall on the stage, but again, dodge roll if you have Chalice, and simply try not to lose too much health before the final phase. And can I just talk about how god tier this animation is? Seriously, the amount of care and dedication put in by the people of Studio MDHR is simply astounding. But for the last phase, you jump on some falling platforms and shoot at and parry Saltbaker's heart. Similar to how Spread is the ideal weapon for the final boss in the base game, Crackshot is the ideal weapon for this boss, especially during this phase where he keeps flying all across the screen. But keep parrying him and damaging him long enough, and you'll be done with who I consider to be the hardest boss in the delicious last course, and also Cuphead as a whole. And that just about does it for this video. It's nice to be able to talk about something that isn't movie related for a change, so I do hope you enjoyed this video. Also, I'm sorry if there were any instances of like ad-libbing or sudden breaths or something, and I'm going off script now with this part, but basically to clear that all up, I'm very short of breath, and recording my lines for this video did take a lot of breath out of me. With that said, make sure to subscribe to see more garbage like this, follow my other social media for additional garbage, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!